Hey, it's Yayforyarn, and today I'm going to show you how to knit the eyelet headband. So this headband is fairly simple to make. We're just going to be knitting a strip with an eyelet stitch pattern, and then we're going to join the ends together in a way that creates a kind of a folded twist. So this is a great summer headband because we're using a lightweight yarn, and I'm actually using Knit Picks Comfy Fingering, which is a cotton blend, and this colorway is called Parchment. It's a 50-gram skein, 218 yards, and this is a number 1 superfine or sock weight yarn, 75% Pima cotton and 25% acrylic. So you can use any number 1 or super fine yarn that you like. If you have leftover sock yarn laying around, this is a great way to use it up. But I'm going to go with this cotton blend yarn for this project just because cotton is a great fiber for summer. So this is a, like I said, fingering weight yarn. It's a sock weight yarn. So I have some sock needles here. You don't have to use sock needles, but the ones that I had in the right size for this are sock needles. They're double pointed, but whatever kind of needles you have doesn't matter as long as they're the right size. So this is a size 1 needle. Now that might seem pretty small, but since we are working with sock weight yarn, this is a pretty lightweight yarn, pretty thin. And so a small needle will produce the right gauge for this thickness of yarn. Now, of course, you'll want to check your gauge and use whatever needle size gives you the right gauge for the pattern. But this is a size 1 knitting needle, and we're going to be using this for our headband. Now, of course, you'll also need things like a measuring tape, a yarn needle, and some scissors to finish the project off. I definitely recommend using the thinner yarn needles. If you only have plastic ones, they don't come usually thin enough for sock yarn. So I like the Chibi tapestry needles, and they come in a little case. The thin ones are what you want because if you use a really thick one, it's not going to be as easy to get it through the fabric where you want it as if you're using a thinner yarn needle. So now that we have all of our supplies, we can get started with the knitting. Alright, so I've got the center pole end of my skein here, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail just because I'm using a long tail cast on, but you can use whatever type of cast on you like. So I'm going to put the slip knot on my knitting needle, and I'm going to cast on a total of 23 stitches. Alright, so I have 23 stitches on the needle, and now we're ready to work row 1. So for row 1, this is the easiest row in the entire pattern. We are going to knit every stitch across. And this is just going to give us a little bit of an edge to establish before we start working our little eyelet lace stitch pattern. Alright, there's the last stitch of row 1. So we've just knit 1 row so far. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to row 2, and rows 2 and 3 are going to be our lace stitch pattern. So the first thing we're going to do for row 2 is we're going to slip the first stitch. Now slipping a stitch just means we're going to move it from the left needle to the right needle without doing anything to it. So you can either slip it with the yarn in back or with the yarn in front, doesn't really matter, because what we're trying to do is make a clean edge here. So to slip the stitch, we're just going to put the right needle into it and lift it off. So now we've got the yarn in the back, we're going to knit 1. That's the beginning of our row. Now we're going to move into our little sequence where we're going to be working the lace. So first we're going to yarn over and knit 2 together. So to knit 2 together, we're going to put the needle into 2 stitches at once and knit through both of them. That's a knit 2 together. So we've got a yarn over, knit 2 together, then we're going to knit 1. Now we're going to do something called SSK, which is an abbreviation for slip, slip, knit, and this is another decrease. This is kind of the reverse of a knit 2 together because it leans the opposite direction. So for slip, slip, knit, I'm going to slip a stitch as if to knit, which means I'm going to insert my right needle into the stitch as if I'm going to knit into it, but I'm not going to knit it, I'm just going to slip it. And then I'm going to do that again, so slip, slip, And then the knit part comes when we put both of these slip stitches back onto the left needle and knit both of them together. So to do this, I'm going to take that left needle and poke it back through both of the stitches. So we're making an X like so. And then we can knit through both of them. Then I'm going to yarn over and knit 2. So our sequence is to yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, SSK, yarn over, knit 2. So we're going to do that again. We're going to do that until we get to the end of the row. Yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1. Then we're going to slip, slip, and knit those 2 together, yarn over, and knit 2. One more time, we're going to yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, slip, slip, knit, yarn over, and knit 2. So that is the end of row 2. And we can't really see anything that's happened yet except that we have some holes where the yarn overs are, but we'll get to see the stitch pattern in a minute once we get going. So that's the end of row 2. We're going to turn and work row 3. So for row 3, we're going to slip the first stitch. And again, this just helps us create a neat, even edge. We're going to slip the first stitch and then purl each stitch across. All right, there's the last stitch of row 3. So you still can't really see very much in the stitch pattern, so I'm going to go ahead and work rows 2 and 3 again so you can kind of get an idea of what that is going to look like once we get going. And we're just going to continue repeating rows 2 and 3 until we have made our piece the correct length for whichever size you're making. So for row 2, I'm going to slip the first stitch, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, SSK, yarn over, knit 2, and we're going to keep doing that again. Yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, SSK, yarn over, knit 2. One more time, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, SSK, yarn over, knit 2. There's row 2. Now for row 3 again, we're going to slip the first stitch like so, and then purl all the way across. All right, so there's rows 2 and 3 again, and we're going to continue repeating those 2 rows until the piece is the length that we need for whichever size you're making. And you can kind of begin to see here how that there are little columns of eyelets. So I'm going to go ahead and continue repeating rows 2 and 3 until I get to the finished length that I need for the size that I'm making, and then I'll show you what that stitch pattern looks like. Alright, so I have continued knitting until my piece is the correct length for the size that I'm making. And you can kind of see that it is curling a little bit. It's mainly curling at these 2 outside folds here. But once we block this material, it will open up quite a bit and lay flat a bit better. So what we're going to do next, now that our piece is the correct length for whatever size you're making, is we're going to bind off. So to bind off, I'm going to knit the first stitch, then I'm going to knit the next stitch and pass the first stitch over the second one. Then I'm going to knit the next stitch, pass the first stitch over the second one. Now, we don't want to do this very tightly, so we're kind of binding off loosely here. But if you have a hard time binding off loosely, you might try using the suspended bind off, which adds an extra step to the bind off, but it does help keep it looser and keep it from getting too tight. So I'm just going to bind off all the stitches all the way across here, and then once we get to the end, we will tie off and leave a tail. All right, there's the last stitch. So now I can cut the yarn, and I'm going to leave a tail that's at least 8 to 10 inches long. All right, now I can just stretch the loop on my needle until the tail comes out, and we are finished with the knitting. So one more step that we need to do before we assemble the headband is to block our rectangle. So blocking is a way of opening up the fabric, getting the stitches to lay smooth and flat, and everything just looks more neat and tidy after blocking. So I'm going to go ahead and wet block this material because it is mostly cotton, but you'll want to use whichever blocking method is ideal for the type of fiber content you're working with. So if you are not familiar with blocking, I have a video on that, which I will link in the description box down below. But I'm going to go ahead and wet block my piece here and get it to lay nice and smooth and flat. And then we will get to the next step, which will be to join the ends together with that little folded twist to finish up our headband. All right, so I've gone ahead and blocked my piece, and it is now ready for the assembly. So you can kind of see here how that the edges have folded under. They do naturally fold on the first line of eyelets right there. So if you prefer a slightly narrower headband, you can just let them fold under. Or if you want it wider, then of course once you put it on, you can just uncurl the edges right there and it will lay flat. So what we're going to do for the final step is to fold the ends around each other and stitch them together. So first up, I'm going to take the yarn tail from our bind off edge and thread it into my yarn needle. All right, so I have both ends of my piece here, and the right side of the piece is facing up. So I'm going to bring one end around to the middle. I'm not twisting it. I'm just bringing it around to the middle. And I want to make sure that it is laying flat, like so. So now I'm going to take the other end, which is also facing right side up. Again, not twisted, and bring it to the middle. And what we're going to do is we're going to take half of the width of the piece on this side and lay it over so that it's overlapping halfway. And this is what we want it to look like. So half of the width of each end is overlapping. Now on the piece that's underneath, I want to take the other half of that and fold it to the middle so that now the edge of this piece is sandwiched right along the fold line here. And then I'm going to take the other half of this piece and fold it this way. So now we have a little sandwich here of all 4 layers. And all we're going to do is just whip stitch this together. So I'm going to take my yarn needle and make sure that I pick up all 4 layers right there and take a stitch all the way through, come a little further over, take another stitch all the way through, and we're just going to continue doing this all the way across so that every piece is being caught in each stitch, every layer of that fabric, and this is what makes the little twist at the top of our headband. All right, one more stitch along the very corner here of that piece, and now I've stitched it all the way across. I'm just going to take one final stitch through that end to secure and then tie the tails together in a double knot. And now these yarn tails are ready to weave in, but first I just want to flip this right side out so that you can see our little twist here. And once the headband is worn, it will lay a little bit smoother because it will be laying around the head. But this is what that little twist looks like once the seam is finished. So I'm just going to go ahead and weave in my yarn tails, and then my headband is finished. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you make this project, let me know how it turns out for you in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.